Hello, what's up? I'm gonna read Imprimis. You guys have probably heard about the police getting shot in Vegas by what AP says here would be anti-government people with anti-government views. All right, this is pretty good. This is pretty crazy news, by the way. I literally predicted this the other day because the shooting that happened at the school. I was just watching it I was kind of just keeping up with it to say like, wow, like I wouldn't be surprised if they try to blame it on Tea Party members or like people who are on the right that are promoting this. They hold on to the Constitution, right? They hold on to what makes us free in this country, and the Second Amendment has to be one of those key principles to our rights being. You know what I mean? We have to defend ourselves somehow. I mean, we know that through the revolution that there's tyranny and that there's corruption and that you got to know how to defend against this stuff. It's I don't know how to explain it, man. That's what it is. It's a publication of the school I go to, Hillsdale College. It's called Imprimis. This has over 2,800,000 readers monthly. This isn't even of this month. This is from last month. But I noticed that he's going to touch on the stuff that it kind of ties in with the whole Bundy ranch thing, and how it was kind of like and I've even seen this myself. Like I'll turn on the TV and they'll have like a TV show where somebody shoots a cop, and it's always some like I don't even want to like sound racist or nothing, but like redneck like type dude. It's always like some guy who's waving an American flag, or he's like right winger or something. They're trying to like make Tea Party and right wing Republicans look bad, man. I can see that, and I think that's pretty weird because they won't cover the things that happened in Chicago over the weekend, like 30 people getting shot and all this stuff, all this violence that happens in Chicago, but they'll cover this because it's like a it's to their best interest of what they want to do, is what I believe. So Sagebrush Rebellion Redivivus Redivivus. I don't know what that what that word means. William Perry Pendley is president of Mountain States Legal Foundation. So he's the president and chief operating officer of MA degrees in economics and political science from George Washington University and his JD from the University of Wyoming College of Law during the Reagan administration. He served as deputy assistant for energy and minerals at the Department of the Interior. He is the author of several books, including War on the West, Government Tyranny on America's Great Frontier, and Sagebrush Rebel. Reagan's battle with environmental extremism extremists and why it matters today. The following is adapted from a speech delivered on April 23rd, 2014 at a Hillsdale College event in Colorado Springs, Colorado, For many, or maybe even most Americans, reports that a rancher in Clark County, Nevada was at odds with federal land bureaucrats, that scores of federal lawyers were litigating against him, and that SWAT-garbed and heavily armed federal law enforcement officers had surrounded his place, might have come as a surprise. They might have been even more surprised in the wake of this standoff, which ended short of deadly escalation thanks to part to negotiations by a local sheriff. To hear that over 50 elected officials from 9 western states had gathered in Utah to discuss a state takeover of a significant portion of federally owned land in the American West. But Westerners, especially rural Westerners who make a living on the federal lands that predominate beyond the 100th meridian by logging, mining, ranching, or developing energy resources, were not surprised at all. What has been most lacking in the reporting on these stories is the background of the disputes, and it should be stated up front, in all fairness, that the Obama administration is not unique in pursuing policies anathema to Westerners. On that score, it has simply followed the examples of the Carter and Clinton administration. In the late 1970s, President Carter's War on the West spawned what came to be known as the Sagebrush Rebellion, which Ronald Reagan embraced during his campaign for president in 1980. I happen to be one who cheers and supports the Sagebrush Rebellion, candidate Reagan proclaimed in a speech in Salt Lake City. Count me in as a rebel. The uprising was spurred by the fact that more than any other region, the American West had been victimized by the environmental policies implemented, utterly regardless of their destructive economic and human consequences during the previous 2 decades. Reagan has seen firsthand the transformation of the environmental movement from one of conservation and stewardship, in which the part played by human beings and technology was vital. So, yeah, I'll repeat that, in which the part played by human beings and technology was vital, to a movement in which humans and technology were understood to be enemies of nature. As articulated by Reagan, opposition to extreme environmentalism represented a return to true environmentalism. America's environmental heritage will not be jeopardized, he promised, while at the same time insisting that we are going to reaffirm that the economic prosperity of our people is a fundamental part of our environment. In terms of the public land issue, Reagan blamed a tiny minority opposed to economic growth for locking up federal lands that hold probably 70% of the potential oil in the United States, and he vowed to support the use of federal lands to meet America's energy, economic, and foreign policy needs. As former governor of California, he knew all too well that the federal government's own, okay, hold on, this is going to blow your mind, I guess, but I don't know if it does or not. To me, it's kind of not new, but I haven't covered this kind of stuff in a while, so I just thought this was interesting. I didn't know I was going to do anything today when it came to this. So, owns a third of the land. So, the federal government owns a third of the land that makes up the United States. Whoa. The vast majority of this being in the West. Federal holdings include nearly a third of Colorado, Montana, New Mexico, and Washington, roughly half of Arizona, California, Oregon, and Wyoming, and 2/3 or more of Alaska, Idaho, Nevada, and Utah. By comparison, the 3 non-western states with the most federal land are New Hampshire at 14%, Florida at 13%, and Michigan at 10%. Some portion of this federally owned land, of course, consists of parks which are preserved for public recreation. Other parts are wilderness areas where motorized activity is barred. But most of the land controlled by the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service is open by law to multiple use activities. So including cattle, grazing, recreation and energy and mineral development. This is the land where disputes arise over use, and it is in these disputes where the Obama administration has picked up where the Carter and Clinton administration left off, adopting the no-use policies promoted by environmental groups who view all federal lands as off-limits to productive human activity. A typical way these policies get implemented is for environmental interest groups to sue a government agency under either the National Environment Policy Act, the NEPA, or the Endangered Species Act, ESA, and for the agency then to settle the lawsuit in the interest group's favor, sometimes as in a 2008 lawsuit filed against the U.S. Forest Service by 3 environmental groups to prevent oil, gas, and mineral extraction in Pennsylvania. The government not only settles the lawsuit but also pays the interest groups for their complaints. In that case, paying out nearly $20,000 just last month. $20,000, sorry. Just last month, Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt filed a lawsuit against the Interior Department of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service over such as sue and settle tactics following an ESA lawsuit by a group called Wild Earth Guardians that sought to restrict land use for agriculture, oil and gas drilling, wind farms, and other activities in a 5-state area. Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, and Kansas, inhabited by the lesser prairie chicken, I guess. These settlements, Pruitt said in a statement, impose tougher regulations and shorter timelines than those imposed by Congress, and thus violate the rule of law. Oklahoma has indicated its willingness to protect the lesser prairie chicken, he added, but it seems increasingly clear this issue isn't about some science or saving endangered species. Following a recent report by the Government Accountability Office on how NEPA is being used to delay projects on federal lands, Dan Kish of the Institute for Energy Research characterized NEPA's effect as paralysis in analysis, pointing out that environmental impact statements, which were expected to take no more than 12 months 30 years ago, now take an estimated 4.6 years to complete. NEPA's consequences are wide-ranging since its passage in 1969. Not a single new oil refinery has been built. Following forest fires in the West, as reported by the National Forest Association, NEPA regulations delay harvests of diseased or burned timber indefinitely. So you can see where this is going. This is Imprimis, by the way, is called. It is Latin for "in the first place." That you should just know that. As such, usable salvage timber wastefully rots away, resulting in lost government income and economic privation for local communities. And after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, it was too little noted that twice, in 1977 and in 1996, plans to build a hurricane barrier and to raise and strengthen the levees were halted by environmentalists. They were halted by environmentalist NEPA lawsuits. Wow. Today, the Keystone XL pipeline, a decision about which has again been delayed until late this year at the earliest, is only the most publicized of the promising projects in terms of both economic prosperity and national defense, which are being delayed and or prevented by NEPA requirements. For example, rare earth elements are critical to today's high-tech and transportation industries. Telecommunications, military use, and clean energy technology, and China currently has 95% of the world's supply of these elements. The Middle East has oil, China, I don't even know what happened right now. The Middle East has oil, China has rare earths, said former Chinese Premier Deng Xiaoping. Despite this, rare earth mines in both Wyoming and California seem to have been put on permanent hold. One company that submitted its operations plan in 2012 has been told that the NEPA process will not be completed at best until late 2015. Executive agencies can also simply implement the extremist environmental agenda on their own. This is how the Obama administration's war on coal is being waged following the failure to pass the president's cap and trade legislation, even in the Democrat-controlled Senate. This January, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, set limits on how much carbon dioxide new coal-fired power plants are allowed to produce. Limits that will require expensive and unproven technology, severely limiting the unlikelihood of new plants being built. This follows past regulation that will force the retirement of more than 30,000 megawatts of power capacity by the end of 2016. Later this year, the EPA plans to establish limits for already existing power plants with devastating implications for coal-rich western states such as Wyoming, which generate more coal annually than the next 6 coal-producing states combined. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska points out that 89% of the coal electricity capacity that is due to go offline due to regulation was utilized as backup to meet demand for energy during the harsh winter that just ended. Not only she and Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, but also liberal Democratic Senator Al Franken of Minnesota have worried that these EPA regulations will threaten the ability of America's power grid to meet future demand. According to the Congressional Research Service from 2009 through 2013, oil and national gas production on private land was up 61% and 33%, respectively, on federal lands. By contrast, oil production was down 11% and gas production was down 28%. This is no mere coincidence. The Monterey Santos oil field in California is estimated to hold more than twice the oil of the Bakken oil field in North Dakota and the Eagle Ford oil field in West Texas combined. Wow. But its development is on hold because federal lands are involved. Wow. See, this is why a lot of people joke around when they say like, yeah, we could, when we have our lawyer jokes and we say, yeah, we don't need them and stuff like that. That's why, man. I mean, you can manipulate the law. You can write as many laws as you want, but there's always going to be, I don't know, man. I don't know if you're that naive to think everybody's your friend and everybody likes you. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people out there, man, that they only care about themselves, guys, and they're just greedy. They're just greedy. They're institutionalized, and they don't really know how to bring peace. They think they're all about it, like prosperity and peace, but it's all fiat. It's all fraud, and it's all dishonorable. It's nothing good about it. There's nothing good about having laws like this and hurting our country like that. That's there you could watch a lot of videos on YouTube, I'm sure, or wherever, and you'll see that there's something. Even in the mainstream media, they kind of tell you a lot of things nowadays. Like, they kind of put it out there, out in the open, really obviously, in my opinion, of stuff that they used to try to hide. You know what I mean, before, and now it's kind of like, it's just obvious, is what I say. It's really obvious that there's like some kind of, special interest. There's not everybody's in it for, the same reason. And I'll just get back into this whole, because federal lands are involved. Apparently wishing to slow production even further, former Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar, ignoring that hydraulic fracturing has been regulated successfully by states for 60 years. Proposed new fracking regulations that will add $345 million in annual cost to Western energy development. Regulatory costs as a whole, it should be noted, are at a record high. Wayne Cruz of the Competitive Enterprise Institute places the total costs of federal regulations in the U.S. in 2013 as greater than the GDPs of either Canada or Mexico. Salazar's successor, Sally Jewell, is not only pressing forward with redundant hydraulic fracturing rules, but is threatening the West with the use of President Obama's power under the Antiquities Act of 1906 to prevent economic activity with massive national monument designations. This was a tactic of the war on the West that President Clinton raised to an art form, most famously announcing in a speech set against the backdrop of the Grand Canyon in Arizona the closure of 1.8 million acres to economic activity, including what might have become the world's largest high-quality, low-sulfur coal mine in economically hard-pressed southern Utah. Excuse me, yeah. I hope you heard me. I'll just say it one more time because I knew, my dogs are probably barking. Okay, low-sulfur coal mine in economically hard-pressed southern Utah. So southern Utah, they don't have a lot, as much as, California, per se, or something. In her most egregious move yet, Jewell signed off on a decision by the EPA to put 1 million acres of Wyoming land, including the entire town of Riverton, Wyoming, with a population of over 10,000, into the Wind River Indian Reservation. Despite the indisputable historical fact that this land was ceded to the U.S. in a 1904 agreement between the United States and the tribes, and in position to a unanimous 1998 U.S. Supreme Court ruling regarding a comparable situation in South Dakota, it is difficult to exaggerate the quasi-religious zeal with which the war on the West is waged. And if you're a Christian, then you probably already know that's explained in the Bible. Some people, they worship the creation. They worship, we could call that the religion of environmentalism if you want, because it is kind of like a religion. It's a worldview. It's a way that people want to, go about their day or whatever. It's just, to me, that's kind of like, it's just, man. I could go on like a huge ramble about that, but I'd rather not. So in her most egregious, I just read that Supreme Court ruling regarding a comparison. Okay, I just read that. It is difficult to exaggerate. Okay, I just read that too. All right, I'm back up to speed. Sorry about that, and thank you for your patience. 2 years ago, a video surfaced of a training lecture on regulatory enforcement by the head of the EPA's Region 6 office, which oversees Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. This senior administrator, who was appointed by President Obama in 2009, cited the Roman Empire as the inspiration for his mode of operation. The Romans used to conquer little villages in the Mediterranean. They'd go into a little Turkish town somewhere, they'd find the first 5 guys they saw, and they'd crucify them. And then, that town was really easy to manage for the next few years. The same year he gave this talk, his office charged in an emergency order what a Fort Worth-based drilling company had contaminated groundwater in Texas's Parker County through hydraulic fracturing. A year and a half later, the emergency order was withdrawn and the case was dismissed in a federal court, but only after a judge criticized the agency for seeking penalties without first investigating the truth of the charges. A commissioner on the Texas Railroad Commission, which regulates oil and gas drilling in the state, accused EPA's Region 6 office of fear-mongering and gross negligence. Wow. That's amazing. Recently, the EPA issued new regulations to redefine wetlands, the term of art by which the agency determines the reach of the Clean Water Act. Under these regulations, a Wyoming man named Andy Johnson, a welder who owns an 8-acre farm, has been targeted because he and his wife built a stock pond on their property and brought in brook and brown trout, ducks, and geese. The EPA is threatening civil and criminal penalties, including a $75,000 a day fine, because Johnson failed to receive permission for his pond from the Army Corps of Engineers. His permit from the Wyoming State Engineer's Office is irrelevant, according to the EPA. So far, Johnson has defied an EPA order to hire a consultant to assess the environmental impact of his stock pond and to propose a restoration project to be completed within 60 days of EPA approval. This goes a lot further than a pond, he is quoted as saying. It's about a person's rights. I have 3 little kids. I am not going to roll over and let the EPA tell me what I can do on my land. It is little wonder that there is talk of another Sagebrush rebellion like that embraced by Ronald Reagan in the late 1970s. Westerners know they deserve better, and that they and their states can be better stewards of their land than federal bureaucrats. Well, this school that I go to is awesome. I learned a lot by going to Hillsdale College about my rights as an American citizen and about just a lot of stuff that the Founding Fathers believed in and what made America great. And if it's one thing I'm learning right now is that we went from the founding principles of this country that made it great, and we just kind of took on this new progressive liberal outlook at stuff, and now everything's a government agent, like a program with bureaucrats, and it's despotic, man. It's just totally it's like government tentacles are all over everything that you look at. They're trying to control everything in your life. They're all up in your business all the time. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? I don't really like government kind of like the all-seeing eye just kind of hovering over my head all the time. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's weird. It's just creepy and it's weird, and anybody that has any dignity, man, doesn't like how the government these days operates. But there's people out there like Ron Paul, man, who I think are really good to listen to. Of course, there's all kinds of other guys that are they want to go back to limited government. They want to go back to the old way of doing things, and you can have that in America like this. I've heard a lot of FDR speeches and whatnot, and he's, you know what I mean. Like, we had a bunch of progressives, and look at what they've done for the last 100 years. You know what I mean? This is kind of like hovering over everybody's shoulder, the weight of the economy and all that stuff. It's kind of like a burden. So nobody likes to have that, right? So I think that we should go back to first principles. I think everybody should know how to be a civilian and not just everybody should learn how to be a citizen, like not just a civilian is what I'm trying to say, like a statesman, someone who knows like the just the founding principles, and that's it. You know, we don't need to really your time to learn that didn't pass you by. You know, there's all kinds of opportunities out there to learn this kind of stuff. And is it important? Yeah, because I mean, if the news nowadays thinks you're so dumb that they can blame Tea Party and right wingers for cops getting shot, and you kind of see it kind of subliminally it's like subliminally put out there on the media, like it's something that goes on, but there's no proof for it. You know, like that doesn't go on. You know what I mean? From what I understand from Tea Party members and like the right is that they like their rights. They like the Second Amendment. They believe in freedom of speech. They believe in you know, just pretty much their right to fight back at whatever they think is tyrannical and kind of invasive in your privacy and stuff. And you know, the rule of law is important. You know, this stuff is important because I don't know, man. If you don't care, then that's you know what I mean. That's like just that's you know it's unfortunate that you know that's kind of how it is nowadays. It's almost like no one cares enough to know what really is going on. So it's hard to even describe this stuff to you, but it is important. You know, like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, to know these things. Northwest Ordinance and all these things to read and find out history about this country and what it had to go through to become what it is today, and why we've been going down this slippery slope for the last 100 years. You can tell it's a whole different type of we've kind of made the country just a, you know, I think FDR said it the best, because he tried to take away the credit from the founding fathers for making this country great. He tried to say something like that he thought of government as it, like Newton would think of you know, physics or something. Like he said, no, you know, government is more Darwinian and it evolves, and it, you know what I mean. And what Newton said is that, you know, it is mechanical. It is, you know, if it ain't broke, I say don't fix it. There's nothing to fix there. But I don't know, you guys this all goes into, you know, a lot of stuff. Politics is a deep issue that if you want to get into it, you go into it. You go to a good school and learn how to figure out what is going on, how government's supposed to work, supposed to how it is being openly told to you what they do with people in government, pretty much bypassing Congress, pretty much not even upholding the law nowadays. The government's really tyrannical, dude, and a lot of people just think about it's like a normal thing, but it really isn't a good thing, because if they can have the type of power that they have today, and that if they could start putting through legislation that gives them more power over health care and stuff like that, and you know, just other random things that they do, then that's bad. You know, like the founding fathers told us to be careful with government that got big and really like invasive of your, you know what I mean, your rights. Like they're always trying to, you know, it's like a shaming. I like how Dinesh D'Souza puts it. They're shaming America so that when they take everything, like your property, they just kind of make you feel like that's what you get because you didn't have that property to begin with. Like it wasn't yours. They kind of even indoctrinate you because they tell you history the wrong way. They tell you it's really true. Like they tell you only what they want you to know, but they don't tell you like the whole truth of the whole matter. Like to call yourself a liberal nowadays would mean that you're really easy on like a lot of stuff that is very taboo in the culture to talk about, like, you know, pro-life and all that stuff. But back then, man, they thought of liberals in a whole different way. So, you know, like they attack your right as an American and they call it liberal. They try to pose as if they're the ones that you want to listen to, like they're the ones that are right all the time, and they give themselves titles like they're officials, and they're total authoritarians, dude. Like they're totally just not giving you your own ability to have your own opinion. You download their opinion, and that's how it is. So if you guys want to learn how to really do this, man, it's not about what's on the left and what's on the right. It's about the rule of law, and it's about your right as a, you know, what the founding fathers would have said it as is, you are made and created with unalienable rights endowed to you by your creator. So, yeah, you know what I mean? That opens up a whole different can of worms for you right there. And what do you believe, you know? But anyways, I'll let you guys go, and I hope you guys give this some serious thought, because this could be getting pretty ugly soon. They got cops getting shot, and they're blaming it on Tea Party members now. It's pretty crazy.